I had a client call yesterday that was so good that it prompted this impromptu podcast because we talked about them struggling to come out of their pause. For context, most of the clients that I serve are pivoting. I'm known for pivoting and transitions and whatnot. So I get a lot of clients who are in that space. And also, FYI, I only share stories that people have given me permission to share. I take confidentiality very seriously. I never share people's names anyway, but what I have learned in this journey is that even when I don't share people's names, sometimes people just don't love their business being out there in the street, even without a name. And so I always get permission to share stories, just FYI. Okay. So I had a call with the client who is indeed pivoting, right? And there are lots of different types of pivots, but her in particular, she is struggling to come out of a pause, right? She paused her business and got a job and is really struggling to come out of it. And in this call, I shared pieces of my story. And at the end of the call, she was so grateful and the conversation went so well. And what I realized is that I actually have not shared so many different transitions that my business has gone through, which is crazy because I'm in the pivoting space, right? If all of my clients are pivoting, then why am I not talking about pivoting? So I want to share some tidbits from the conversation. So I'm going to do a series on pausing your business. Okay. Because what I know to be true, okay, is that it is so common. First of all, pivoting is very emotional. Let's just start there. I don't care whether it's a personal reason why you're pivoting, a professional reason why you're pivoting. It is so incredibly emotional. And if you're not careful, you will get stuck. It is very common for people to pivot, whether it be a forced pivot or not, and get stuck in what I call a wilderness season. Okay, so because of that, we are going to do this 4-part series. Today's going to be part one. Okay. All around pivoting your business. Okay. Essentially, what do you do when you're forced to pivot or when you feel like you need to pivot? Okay. This is going to be episode number one, obviously. Episode two, we're going to talk about the before, right? When you are trying to decide if you should pivot, when you're trying to prepare to pivot because maybe you already decided, when you're trying to manage your emotions, all the things. Okay. And then in the next episode, we're going to talk about during. How do I come back from a pivot? How do I manage my mind during a pivot? How do I rest, et cetera, right? How do I not get stuck in the transition? Okay. And then we're going to talk about the last episode is going to be all about the after, right? How do I rebuild? How do I regain momentum, right? How do I essentially step back in and make an actual elevation? Because again, I see a lot of people who pivot and they come back in and they've made a very lateral move. When really what was supposed to happen, if you stay strong during the pivot, what you do, you're able to make a step up, right? What we actually want is an evolution, an elevation rather. What we don't want is a lateral move, right? But if you don't do the during and the before correctly, I've seen too many people where the after is tough. So we're going to talk about all the things. We're going to talk about entrepreneur trauma. We're going to talk about addiction to achievement. We're going to talk about decentering work from your identity. Listen, we're going to talk about increasing your capacity. We're going to talk about honoring your capacity. We're going to talk about the messy middle, just all the things. Okay. We're going to talk about all the things. Today, I just want to do one thing. I just want to do one thing. I want to encourage you. Okay. Because I understand. And let me just tell you a few of the things. I'm going to give you a little highlight reel. We'll go deeper into them when we do some of the other episodes. But I want to encourage you both from a place of a personal place as someone who has done their own pivots, but also from a professional place as someone who has held thousands of people through their own pivots. Okay, so both personally and professionally. Okay, so let me just try to run through. Should have jotted them down, but I got enough memory here. Fingers crossed. Okay. The one that I remember, two, there are two that I remember the most. One I remember the most is because I cried on the call when I announced it to my team. And that is when I went from having an all black brand where all of my programs were black this, blacky black, to not having a black brand. And that was such an emotional decision for me. I remember that day. I remember crying. I remember having to cut my video, all the things. Okay. What else? Oh, I also remember changing my niche, right? I went from straight business coaching, right? For the first, I don't know, 3, 4 years of my business, I was helping aspiring coaches build their coaching business. So I was just straight business coaching. And then halfway through, both my audience and my topic changed, right? So I went from serving aspiring coaches to serving seasoned coaches, seasoned entrepreneurs, people who making multiple six figures, even seven-figure clients. And I moved into what I might consider to be like a high performance space where sometimes I'm doing business coaching and sometimes I'm doing more internal kind of coaching. I had a client once call me a business therapist, and I was like, oh, yeah, I love that for me. Okay. Just context in case you're new to the podcast, I am a licensed therapist by trade. So I'm not just out here ruining people's lives. Okay. Another transition, I went from having a team of 7 to only doing project-based hires and hiring contractors. That was a whole situation. The second one that is most memorable, and really it was the hardest, was when I shut down a program that I had. It was a six-figure revenue stream, okay, and that one cost me. The shutting down was one thing. I made that decision based on how things were going. But what I did not anticipate is the impact that it would have to me emotionally. So that's put me in a whole wilderness season. We'll talk about that. And then the most recent, right? The most recent is I had multiple surgeries in the last several months, right? One was planned, one was unplanned, the other two were unplanned. One of them being the result of the first surgery, and experienced tons of complications and cancer scares and just ER visits and all kinds of things. And so we'll talk about all of those things. One of the things, another reason why this prompted is a great conversation to have is because one of the things that I was telling them on the client call that I mentioned, because she referenced some posts that I made during the last few months about the surgery. And she just was like, man, it just felt like it was so light, right? I didn't even know you were going through all of that stuff. You're cracking jokes and blah, 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 blah. And it was just like, it was very amazing to see. And so I referenced one of the posts and I said, I mentioned that. I wrote a whole post about how the number of people who are either commenting under my posts or DMing me or whatever, who are just saying you're so strong or some version of the strong friend. And so I did a whole post where I talked about as much as I appreciate, okay, y'all telling me I'm strong, sometimes we confuse the words, right? Sometimes, and basically, I'll try to find the post. And for those people who are interested in, I'm sure I could find it and tag people or whatever if people are really interested. But in short, the post was, oh, I want to go into a whole thing and maybe I'll save it. But here's what I will say: a lot of times, our confidence is in our competence. It's in our education, it's in our expertise, it's in our experience. And there's a place for that. We should be brushing our shoulders off for some of that. But unfortunately, my friend, competence is not the same as confidence. And when our confidence is in our competence, right, that is where it will eventually, might take a little while, right? But it will eventually mess with you because that's not where our confidence is supposed to be in. It's not actually supposed to be in our competence. And so I think anyway, I'll go into all of that. But we talked a lot about that on the call. It's like putting your focus, your faith, your intention, your actions in the right place. In this episode, I really just want to do one thing. I really just want to encourage you. I just want to encourage you before we even go into this series, because I know that when you are in transition, your mind, it fucks with you. Okay. It talks to you about being a failure. It talks to you about all the what ifs. It talks to you about self doubt. Your mind just really talks to you many times. And so, if you happen to be in that place, whether you are in the before, the during, or the after, I just want to encourage you, you are not your business. I'm going to say it again. You are not your business. Whether you are an entrepreneur or not, meaning whether you listen, the number of clients that I have that used to be full time entrepreneurs that are now part time entrepreneurs because they also have a job, or now they're a full time employee and a part time. Like, no matter what your status is as an entrepreneur, you are still amazing. You are still amazing, friend. I just want you to, you're not your business. You and the business are separate. And oh, I want to go into it, but I'm not. It's because you haven't separated who you are from what you do that the transition and the pivot and the pausing is so hard. This is called attachment, right? We are attached to our businesses. We are attached to the title of entrepreneurship so often. So then if I have to change my status, I'm not a full-time entrepreneur anymore, or I'm some version, whatever part is changing, is anything that you're attached to is going to mess with your emotions. We're going to talk about attachment too. So I just want to give you one activity for you to start doing right now, no matter what place you're in your pivoting journey, whether you are considering it, whether you're being forced to, whether you feel like you should, whether you're trying to rebound from it. Okay. Here's the one thing that if you do it, it will give you strength in a way that you did not even know possible. Okay. So here's the thing I want you to do. I want you to make a list of who you are. To be clear, I'm not saying make a list about what you do. Now, can you add some things on there about what you do? Sure. But we're talking about a 70-30 split. We're not talking about 50-50. I almost want an 80-20. I almost don't want you to put it on there at all. Okay. But I'm going to give you a little grace. Give you a little grace. Okay. And here's an example of the difference. Okay. Who you are your character traits. Okay. And don't even put hardworking on there, because I know that's one of the ones you just take so much pride in. Pick something else. Okay. So if I use myself, characteristic trait, I am funny. I'm a funny person. Okay. You may not have laughed yet, but you're going to laugh. If you've been around for more than 2 days, you're going to laugh. Okay. That's an example of who I am, has nothing to do with what I do. Right. An example of what you do would be, I am a mother. Oh, you thought I was going to go to the entrepreneur? No, that was too easy. Look at all the roles that you play. Okay. That's what you do if you're not careful. Okay. We don't want the roles. We want the who you are. We want the characteristic traits. Okay. And what you're going to do with this list is that every single day, okay, don't worry. I'm not giving you nothing that you can't do is outside of your capacity, because I know if you're in a pivoting season, it's not much we can do. Okay. It's real fragile. Okay. But what you're going to do is to say one thing on that list in a positive way and with as much energy as you can muster up in that particular day. Some days will be better than others, right? I'm going to give you an example in just a second. But you're going to say something on that list and remind yourself of who the fuck you are. You're going to need to remind yourself. Intellectually, you already know. Intellectually, you're an expert. You know you're successful. You know you're blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but it's so much noise happening when you're pivoting, both internally and externally, that you often forget. So this activity is about reminding yourself. Okay. You're going to say something on that list every single day. So this is like a 1 minute exercise. Okay. And the key is that you're going to say it with energy. Some days it's going to be amazing energy. Sometimes it's going to be a little less, but the goal is to be saying it with energy. Okay. So here's an example of what I mean. So let's say I was having body dysmorphia. And let me not go to clinical. Let's just say I didn't really love the way I looked. Entrepreneurs put on a lot of weight typically. Not, no, let me not say it that way. Sometimes, right? Many times I see entrepreneurs who come to me and they're like, "Ooh, I don't feel good in my body." Okay. So let's say that you wanted to start addressing the weight, the body image, not feeling good in your body, all the things. Okay. And you were going to go and say, "I'm beautiful." Maybe somebody told you somewhere to do some affirmations. Okay. The problem with that is that it's not bad advice, it's incomplete, which is 99% of the information on the internet. Okay. 99% is you going to tell them the whole story or you just going, okay, you going to leave out the most important part. Okay. You going to forget the context. Okay. Got it. We're not doing that here. Okay. In order for affirmations to work, because this is what would happen. If I got up every day and said, I'm beautiful, at the end of 30 days, I wouldn't really feel that much different. It would be a good chance that if I just said it every day, eh, maybe, but probably not. And then I would walk off and say, affirmations don't really work or they don't really work for me. But what we often forget in our busyness is that it is rarely what you do and far more about how you do it. Okay. So, in order for affirmations to do what you need them to do, right, which is to create a level of confidence and reassurance and trust, and right, it's like that's the purpose. But in order to get that, you have to say it with energy. So, instead of saying, "I'm beautiful," what I would do is I would get out of my bed and I would say, "Girl, turn to the left, to the right. Did you disappear? Girl, you are thin, honey. Look at you looking how you're looking." Okay, so I'm still saying the same thing. I'm saying I'm beautiful. Okay. But I'm saying it with a different energy. It matters. Y'all gonna hear me say this over and over. Energy matters more than effort. I know that's like a wild thing to say for all of my hyper independent, overachieving, overworking. I know, but I'm just gonna plant the seed and I'm gonna keep watering it. It's not that we don't want effort. It's not that effort isn't important. It is just not the most important. Energy actually matters more than effort, right? That is why people who are confident and unskilled are making more money than the people who are experts because energy, i.e., confidence, okay, not going to go there. So, what you're going to do is you're going to say something on the list every single day with energy. And whatever energy, I said it with my kind of energy, okay? You say it with the kind of energy that matters to you. And I would encourage you to do it with a little structure. Pick a time when I get up in the morning or before I go to bed, or so that way you're not forgetting. You have to shore up your self trust in a season where lots of things are changing. Doesn't matter whether you decided to make the change or whether you're being forced to make the change, whether the change was planned or unplanned, whether the change is personal and you going through some kind of health thing or you're getting a divorce or maybe you've lost somebody in your family. Like it doesn't matter whether it's personal or whether it's professional. Maybe things stopped working in the business or you're burnt out or the industry shifted or you now want something new because things feel misaligned. It doesn't really matter. It does not matter one bit at all. What is required is self trust. Another thing that you will hear me say often is the two things that every entrepreneur needs is cash flow and self trust. If you got them, you out here rocking and rolling. All right. I know this was a little bit of a longer episode because I don't like to do long episodes. But like I said, this was an impromptu podcast. And so I hope that you will join me on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for me as we drop the next 3 episodes. Peace. Before I jump off, share this with a friend. Share it on your timeline. The number of people who are suffering in silence. Pivoting is a very private thing. Lots of people talk about pivoting things in their business. But when it's hard, oftentimes you don't know until they're on the other side. Right. So one of the best things that you can do is just share it on your timeline. Right. Tag some people, send it to some people if you happen to know they're in a season of transition so they don't miss the goods. All right. Peace.